The sun was setting over the small village, casting a golden hue on the thatched roofs and dirt paths. The air was thick with excitement as the villagers prepared for the yearly festival in the neighboring village. Every year, the festival brought together villagers from across the land, celebrating the harvest, the gods, and the community through dance, food, and music. It was a time when worries were forgotten, and joy filled the air. This year, like every year, the festival promised to be the grandest celebration yet. Among the excited villagers was Amina, a woman of unparalleled beauty. Her skin was the color of rich mahogany, glowing under the sunlight. Her long, flowing hair cascaded down her back in gentle waves, and her bright eyes sparkled with kindness. She was well loved by everyone in the village, young and old alike. Amina's laughter was infectious, her heart generous, and her spirit free. She had grown up in the village, and her family was known for their wisdom and generosity. But despite her beauty, Amina was humble, and she spent her days caring for her elderly mother and helping those in need. That evening, Amina, along with other villagers, set off for the festival, walking down the path to the neighboring village. The festival grounds were alive with music, the sound of drums echoing through the air, and the scent of grilled meats and spices mingling with the cool breeze. It was a celebration of life, a feast for the senses, and Amina was caught up in the excitement of it all. She danced, laughed, and marveled at the vibrant costumes and performances, her heart light with the joy of the festivities. It was there, amid the music and laughter, that she met Chijiok, a young man from a neighboring village. He was tall, with a lean but strong build, his eyes dark and intense. He had heard rumors of Amina's beauty, but nothing had prepared him for the presence she commanded when he finally laid eyes on her. His heart raced as he approached her, captivated by her graceful movements and radiant smile. "May I have this dance?" Chijiok asked, his voice calm yet tinged with an unspoken urgency. Amina, taken aback for a moment by the intensity of his gaze, smiled and nodded. "Of course," she replied, and the two of them joined the other dancers, spinning and laughing beneath the glowing stars. For the rest of the evening, Chijiok and Amina danced together, shared stories, and enjoyed the evening. There was an undeniable connection between them, and for a while, it felt as if time had stopped. Amina found herself enjoying his company, something she hadn't felt in a long time. He was charming, confident, and appeared to genuinely care about her. They spoke of dreams, of the future, of life beyond the boundaries of their villages. But as the night wore on and the festival began to wind down, Chijiok found the courage to ask the question that had been lingering on his mind. "Amina," he said softly, taking her hand as the last of the firelight flickered in the distance. "Would you be mine?" Amina's heart skipped a beat. She had enjoyed their time together, but she wasn't ready for anything more. She had her responsibilities in the village, and her heart wasn't yet open to love. She had her mother to care for, and her life was simple, grounded in the rhythms of daily life. She knew that she couldn't give him what he wanted. "I am flattered by your words, Chijiok," she said gently, her eyes meeting his. "But I am not ready for such a thing. I have many duties here, and my heart is not yet open to love." Chijiok's face fell, disappointment clouding his features, but he tried to mask it with a smile. "I understand, Amina. But I cannot help but hope that one day you'll change your mind." "I cannot promise what I cannot give," Amina replied softly, her voice firm yet kind. She placed a hand on his arm, her touch warm. "But I wish you well, Chijiok. May you find happiness." With that, she turned and began walking back toward the village, the sounds of the festival fading behind her. Her heart was light, but something in the way Chijiok had looked at her lingered in her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that their encounter would have consequences, though she couldn't yet understand what. As Amina walked back to the village, she passed through the familiar paths of the forest, the cool night air brushing against her skin. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows on the ground. She carried the heavy water jar on her head, feeling the weight of the journey. Her mother would be waiting for her, and Amina's thoughts turned back to the quiet life she led in the village. But she was not alone on this path. Hidden among the trees, 5 young men waited, Chijiok and his friends. Chijiok, unable to accept Amina's refusal, had been consumed by his desire. He could not let her go so easily. Desperation clouded his judgment, and he had arranged for his friends to ambush Amina as she returned from the stream. As Amina drew closer to the village, she noticed something strange, an unsettling silence in the air. Before she could react, the men leapt from the shadows, overpowering her. She struggled and screamed for help, but there was no one around. The village was far away, and the forest was silent, as if the world had turned a deaf ear to her cries. The men took what they wanted, forcing themselves upon her. Amina fought back with all her strength, but in the end, she was left broken, her dignity stripped away, her spirit shattered. The men laughed as they walked away, leaving her alone in the dark, crying in the dust. When she finally gathered enough strength to stand, she stumbled home, feeling as though her world had collapsed. She had been violated, her innocence destroyed. And in the village, where virginity was sacred, this assault meant that she would never be able to marry. Her hopes, her dreams of a future, were now nothing but a distant memory. The days following the assault were a blur for Amina. She felt as though she were moving through life like a ghost, disconnected from the world around her. Her mother noticed the change, but said nothing, fearing the truth her daughter was unwilling to speak. The village had turned its back on Amina, gossip spreading like wildfire, with whispered conversations about the once beautiful young woman whose virginity had been taken from her. Amina spent her days in silence, her eyes empty, her heart heavy. The world she had known was no longer the same. The shame and betrayal she felt suffocated her every waking moment. Her life, once full of promise and light, now seemed like a distant memory. But deep within, a fire was kindling, an anger that refused to die, a desire for justice that could no longer be ignored. One evening, as the full moon rose high in the sky, Amina ventured into the forest. She had heard stories from the elders about a powerful herbalist who lived deep in the woods, a woman known for her knowledge of ancient rituals and magic. Amina had no choice but to seek her out. There were no other answers, no other paths she could see. The assault had destroyed her future, and the village had cast her aside. The only thing left for her now was revenge. The forest was thick with the scent of damp earth and moss as Amina walked through the trees, her feet sure and steady despite the heaviness in her chest. The journey to the herbalist's hut took hours, but when she arrived, the small clearing where the hut stood seemed eerily quiet. The herbalist's home was humble, made from weathered wood and dried herbs that hung from the rafters. The herbalist herself, an old woman with silver hair and sharp, knowing eyes, stood in the doorway. "You've come," the herbalist said without greeting, her voice as soft and strong as the wind through the trees. I've been waiting for you. Amina didn't speak at first. She had rehearsed her words 1,000 times, but now, standing before the herbalist, they seemed to escape her. The pain of her loss, the humiliation, the rage, it all swelled inside her like a storm, ready to burst. I've been wronged, Amina finally said, her voice raw. I've been violated. My life, my future, it has been stolen from me. I seek revenge. I want them to feel the pain I have felt. I want to make them suffer, to make them understand the weight of what they've done. The herbalist listened quietly, her face unreadable. She stepped aside, gesturing for Amina to enter. Sit, she said simply, and Amina obeyed, sinking into the small chair by the fire. The herbalist spoke in measured tones, explaining the power she could offer. You want revenge, but revenge comes at a cost. The path you seek is dark, and the price is high. I can give you what you want, but it will change you. Forever. Amina's heart pounded as she listened, but she didn't hesitate. There was no turning back now. The men who had destroyed her life were still living their lives, blissfully unaware of the pain they had caused. They walked freely in the village, their families unaware of the deep corruption that had taken root within them. Amina had already lost everything, she had nothing left to lose. I am ready, Amina said, her voice steady now. Give me the power. I will make them pay. The herbalist nodded, her face softened with something akin to pity. She rose and began gathering her tools, vials of dark liquid, roots, and powders from ancient trees. She began chanting softly under her breath, her hands moving in delicate patterns as the room filled with the rich, earthy aroma of the plants. The fire crackled beside them, casting flickering shadows on the walls. You will wear a mark, the herbalist said, her voice deepening as the ritual began. A tattoo, not of your skin, but of your soul. It will be hidden, a secret only those who have tasted your power will ever know. It will change the men who come to you. They will forget their homes, their families, and they will become slaves to your will. Amina felt a cold shiver run down her spine. The tattoo would be placed in the most intimate of places, a mark that would tie her to the men she sought to control. But the anger inside her overpowered her fear. She could no longer be the innocent girl the village had once loved. She was something else now, something darker, something stronger. As the herbalist began to work, Amina felt a sharp pain unlike anything she had experienced before. It was not just physical, it was a deep, internal change, as though her very essence was being altered. The ink burned into her skin, leaving behind a mark that would never fade, a symbol of her vengeance. When the process was complete, the herbalist stood back, her expression unreadable. You are now bound to this mark. No man will be able to resist you. They will come to you, and they will serve you. They will forget everything, except their need to obey. Amina stood up, her body trembling. She looked at herself in the reflection of a darkened pot, and saw something different. She saw power in her eyes, a power she had never known. Her body had changed, but her mind was set on the path ahead. You have what you came for, the herbalist said softly. But remember, power is a double-edged sword. It will give you what you seek, but it will also take from you. What will you do when the price of your revenge becomes too high? Amina nodded, her jaw set in determination. "I will do what I must," she said, and turned to leave the hut, her heart heavy with the knowledge of the dark road she had just chosen. Amina returned to the village with a heart full of cold resolve. The ritual had given her power, a power that pulsed within her every time she thought of the men who had taken everything from her. The mark on her private part, now glowing faintly under the moonlight, was the key to her revenge, and she would use it to its fullest extent. The mystery deepens as the encounters intensify. What is it about her that drives the men to follow, to speak to her, to yearn for her presence? You won't want to miss what happens next. Watch out for part 2, where the secrets begin to unfold.